Hi everyone, it's Melanie here from Sweet Thing Black Orchid. As a follow-up to the bridal showcase that we did this Sunday, January the 6th, I promised a few do-it-yourself brides that I would indeed post this on Facebook and also on YouTube so that they could repeat the lesson that we had on how to put together a bridal bouquet made out of roses. This is the specific flower that we chose because it's relatively safe and it can be done. I do advise, however, ladies and even gentlemen, if you're going to venture on doing something like this, that you do practice this more times than not, because it's a very difficult venture and there's so many different elements that you want to think about. Temperature controls, storage, and also transportation. There's a list of things, and I can post some of those concerns on our Facebook and also the new blog that we'll be posting very soon. But getting on with the project, though, I just quickly wanted to show you how to put this together. I'm going to use tools and materials that you're most likely going to find in your home, not necessarily the things that we would have in a professional workshop, simply so that it makes more sense to you. Bear with me, we are under construction in our new workshop, so I'm here in my kitchen. It's the biggest place that I've got to use space for, so hopefully you can deal with that. Okay, so we're going to get started. You can't probably see it here, but I have a bucket here of red roses. That's what we're going to use. This is going to be a very small bouquet and a very clean and tight bouquet, because I think if you're going to do it yourself, you want to keep it small, keep it simple. Okay, so with that being said, you always want to make sure that your roses have time to open. We'll talk about instructions on how to get them open on the blog and on Facebook again for the sake of time here. But just remember that you always want to pick your beautiful, the biggest, the best looking rose to really begin at the center of your bouquet. And for that reason, I think I'm going to put this guy back and probably take this guy. Okay? And there's going to be a lot that we'll skip through here just so that we can get a general video posted pretty quick for you. But again, if there's any questions, you guys can always email me or send messages via Twitter, however it is that you communicate, and I'll try to answer those for you right away. So with that being said, again, we're going to pick our most beautiful rose, the one that's showing off just the best here, and use that as our top piece. From there, what you're going to always want to remember is that you're going to crisscross your roses, okay? You never want to put them side to side, because the pressure from putting them side to side can actually snap the stem. And of course, as you're walking down the aisle, roses falling out, never good luck. Okay, so you're going to crisscross your roses, okay? And you can't see from under my hand, but hopefully that gives you a good visual there. And what you want to remember, when you begin to add more roses, the crisscross begins to get very confusing. So after you've really crisscrossed the first two, forget about that concept, kind of. Just go for where the holes are, or the open spaces. So there's a natural hole here versus here. So it would make sense that your rose would go there. Okay? You're going to hold it in your hand. You're not going to tie this with twine like a lot of professionals do, because once you begin to tie these together with twine as you go, you can't move them if you make mistakes later on down the road. And for DIY folks, I want you to be able to adjust this as much as possible. We can always get into the finer hand tying procedures and other things in other videos. Okay, so then naturally again, the next open spot comes here on the opposite side. Now as I hold these, they're going to move around a little bit. That's okay. The point is just to try to get them all in your hand. That's a trick in itself. And get them looking like the beginning of a bouquet. And as you can see, this side is a little more flat than this side is. So we'll build to that particular side. Okay? And as we mentioned, this is going to be a very petite bouquet for the sake of time and teaching here. But I think ultimately we'll still, I'm going to just take a moment and pull off this dead leaf here, because nobody likes a dead leaf on a rose, right? Okay, so again, we're building here, and we're just basically filling in the spots as we go. So as you can see there, it's beginning to form a bouquet, and there's some that are not necessarily where we want them to be, but we'll come back and we'll fix that momentarily. Okay, the crisscrossing is getting super confusing, but again, the point is that we're filling in where the holes are now, not so much focusing on making sure that there's a even crisscross action going on. Okay, so there we have a nice hand-tied, arranged bouquet. But you don't want to just leave it at that, because if you kind of look at it, there's some roses that are higher than others, and if you're looking at it dead on, you may have gaps or what have you. So this is the time when you begin to manipulate the heads by the stem to pull them into place. You can tighten your grip a little bit here. You don't want to make it too tight up here because, again, you don't want to snap the roses. The more comfortable you get with working with roses, the more you'll be able to manhandle them. But for now, work with your stems to pull them into place. Okay? And then I'm going to lift this one up just a little bit. And there you have it. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to add another one. I'm going to leave it just like that. Okay, so there you have a very simple, small, petite bouquet, but this is really the premise behind all larger bouquets. This is where they start. In order to get larger, what you would do in this case, obviously probably double the roses, but instead of bringing them a little bit lower here on the side, you would leave them all flush even. Flush and even, flush and even. And the more flush and even they are, the bigger the top surface is. And then as you want to begin to dome it off to the side, you're going to pull the roses down a little bit so they're not going to be as even, if that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, info@sweetthingblackorchid.com. Okay, so that's it. Now for you, needless to say, roses are too firm to use floral tape to bind. You can use a floral twine, which this is. I will show you just really, I'm not going to actually bind this because I want you, for DIY folks, to use rubber bands. Okay, they're a little more forgiving and they're a little bit more gentle on the hands. But if you were using twine, if you're like me and you're not really going to listen to me, but you're going to do what you want to do, just use twine. Okay, just what I would advise you to do is just be very careful. Don't pull it too tight. So you're going to leave a good length tail here so that you can come back around again and use it to tie itself to the other tail. And then you're just going to wind. You're not going to wind down the width here because you still want to, in the event that you only want to put your satin ribbon part of the way down, you don't want twine showing up underneath that. So you're going to stay relatively close in the same area over itself. Tight, firmly, but not too tight. And then, of course, you come around and tie here. Again, I'm not going to do that because I want to show you the rubber band technique. And professionals do both, really. So you won't feel any less accomplished by using a rubber band versus a twine. Okay, I've just literally got some office supply rubber bands here. I've got a little movement in my bouquet, so again, I'm just going to adjust it a bit. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest to you is start with one rubber band first, not one of the super tight ones, okay, and not one of the super loose ones either, okay, or thin ones I should say. You're going to go with one that's kind of right in between. I would take one or two of the stems, put the rubber band around it, right where your hands are, right where you're holding it, and then you're going to begin to wind it around the bouquet in the same manner that you did the twine, but just for rubber band. And just when you get to the end, not too short because you want to still be able to come down and bring it around and catch it on the tail of another one of the stems, you're going to come and do just that. In this case, again, I'm also going to take two of the tails, okay, and put it right there and secure it. I'm not going to just leave it here. I'm actually going to do that same thing one more time. This time I'm using a rubber band that is a little bit tighter. I'm also starting on the same two, making sure that you bring that rubber band up as high as possible for the same reason that you don't want to do the twine all the way down. You don't want to inhibit the ribbon covering the kind of our mechanisms in underneath here. So okay, just wind it again. Same thing. And there you are. There you are. It's completely done. The only thing that's left to do, of course, is to cut the stems nice and even, and then, of course, to bind it with ribbon. I'm going to go ahead and cut the stems for you just so you can see how you want to do it, because you do want to make them perfectly flush. In the event that you do want to take your satin ribbon all the way down and around the bottom, or all the way down to appear like it's going around the bottom, but not necessarily covering the bottom. And I'll define that again in a minute here. Again, I would normally use floral shears. If you have them, great. If you don't, good old household scissors, okay? Some of these stems are stronger than you think, so you're going to want to use a pretty nice pair of floral scissors, heavyweight, very strong, okay? So what you're going to do, however you feel like holding this, the one thing that you want to remember when you're holding it, watch me stab myself, is you never want to hold it up here. The more pressure, you can see that these roses are already bending and they're under a certain amount of pressure here. The more pressure that they have, the more likely they are to snap. Okay, so you don't want to hold here. You always want to hold down here where there's not as much pressure. So I'm going to cut this over a bucket, but you'll see how I'm cutting them. Just a couple stems at a time. Okay. in your face. But just using the first ones that I cut, of course, to measure the next ones that I'm going to cut. Okay, and so on until you're done. And then I squeeze them again, second shot them, cut off any one that might have missed, and then you have a nice blunt bottom. So now, with this evenly done, you can wrap your satin ribbon all the way to the edge without having to come and wrap it around the bottom, because a lot of times wrapping the ribbon around the bottom can get a little complicated, especially when you have a really big bouquet or stems, flowers that you've chosen that have really large stems. So you probably can't see that that's flush, but you'll see, you know, I just wanted you to see this particular perspective. So now that you have your bouquet, you're ready to tie your ribbon around it. Remember, when you're tying your ribbon around, not too close up here. There's ways that you can disguise this. Another day, another lesson, if you want to, if you don't want too much of that grain exposed, but don't do it with your initial ribbon that you're wrapping around your bouquet handle. Okay, that's it. I'll post this on the web for you, and on YouTube. We're also going to post it on Facebook. But remember, if you have any questions about this or anything else, please feel free to write me or call me at sweetthingblackorchid.com, info@sweetthingblackorchid.com, or 301-351-8042. Thanks so much. Take care.